At 2 in the morning, the first Ram-2 strike drone crossed the fence line at Berdyansk Airfield, 80 meters over the dark, holding a steady 135 kilometers per hour. Below it, 17 Russian military helicopters sat in neat rows on the apron K-52 gunships and Mi-8 transports, the core of Russia's helicopter fleet in the south. They were parked wing to wing behind a shield most bases never get, a full S-400 battery, Russia's premier long-range air defense system, and a Pantsir vehicle covering the short range. On the base radar screens, the night still looked ordinary. The crews on watch would see one drone, shoot it down, and take it as proof they had won. They were wrong about what the drones were for. This was not the attack. It was what cleared the way for it. Before the sun rose, that shield would be switched off one machine at a time. 6 small drones, one already shot down, were about to take apart the best defended airfield on that coast, and no one would understand how until it was too late. 14 minutes earlier, at 1:46 in the morning, 32 kilometers to the south, 6 Ram-2 strike drones came off their rails in the dark. These were not the small first-person view quadcopters that hunt tanks near the front. They were fixed-wing attack drones, each with a fuselage, folding wings, and a single small-shaped charge warhead. The machines flew themselves most of the way and were steered onto their targets by a pilot during the final stretch. A single covert team had carried them in piece by piece and set up inside occupied ground, close enough to reach the base but far enough to stay under the regional radar picture. They assembled the wings, loaded 6 separate routes, and checked the 6-minute clock that everything after this would run against. Each drone carried 3 to 5 kilograms of explosive, barely enough to wreck a single vehicle. That was the point. These 6 were not sent to destroy an airbase. Each had one assigned target, and together they were sent to switch off everything that could stop what came behind them. They flew in 2 loose groups at 80 meters, following the low ground and coastline clutter. 6 small motors made almost no sound a sentry could place the thin, high buzz the wind kept pulling apart. For about 10 minutes, they were nothing more than small, slow returns lost against the terrain of a shoreline at night. The one sensor built to see threats like this, the base surveillance radar, finally caught them at 8 kilometers, 6 low, slow returns crawling in from the south. On the base air defense net, a duty operator said it first, low contacts multiple, not turning. That gave the crews about 4 minutes of warning. It was not enough because the drones were already coming for the radar itself. Then the jamming started. Russian electronic warfare reached out around 12 kilometers and pulled the satellite navigation out from under them. Route markers drifted. One drone slid several hundred meters off its corridor, but the drones did not need the satellites. Each ran an inertial course locked in before launch, and the operators only had to see through the nose cameras during the final 4 kilometers. In the ground station, the video broke into blocks and static. One operator, watching a target box drift off its corridor, said only, "Hold it, correct and close." They accepted the smeared video and flew on. The cost was small and exact. The drones sent for the communications relay arrived about 40 seconds late, while everything else held its clock. The first drone, Alpha, climbed. At 400 meters, it rolled over, the motor pitching up into a scream, and dove at close to 50 degrees straight into the rotating surveillance antenna. A white flash, and the base lost its low-altitude picture in an instant. Seconds behind it, a second drone, Bravo, stayed low and put its warhead into the radar's power and cooling unit, so the antenna could not simply be switched back on. One radar became a lasting blackout. The base did not lose just a sensor. It lost its eyes and the spare switch with them. A third drone, Charlie, was already rising against the far more valuable target, the 92N6, the multifunction radar at the heart of the S-400, the vehicle that finds targets, builds the firing solution, and steers the interceptors to them. It came down in a steep dive onto the radar cabin, and the most expensive vehicle in the battery went up in a single hit. The S-400 launchers were never touched. Every missile and every tube stayed intact, and every one of them was now blind. The S-400 did not lose its missiles. It lost the one radar that tells them where to go. A fourth drone, Delta, crossed the southern edge of the base and struck the air defense communications relay, the link that would have let the surviving launchers borrow tracks from radars farther back. With the mask down, the battery was not just blind, it was cut off. That left one system still awake. The Pantsir, the base's short-range gun and missile vehicle, the last thing on the field that could actually kill a drone. 2 of the 6 had been held back for it, Echo and Foxtrot. Echo came in straight, with no jinking or evasion, a slow and obvious shape sliding out of the northwest. The Pantsir did exactly what it was designed to do. Its radar caught the drone at about 4.2 kilometers. At 3.5 kilometers, it fired. A hard crack, a rising hiss, and the interceptor ran the drone down and tore it apart at 2.6 kilometers, leaving a bright cloud of fragments hanging in the night air. The crew had won the shot. They had also just given Foxtrot everything it needed. While the Pantsir's radar was busy killing Echo, Foxtrot was already inside the fight, 1.7 kilometers out, closing fast on a different bearing. The Pantsir's missiles need about 1,200 meters of run just to arm. As the crew fought back through the fragment cloud to find the new track 7 seconds, 8, 9, the drone slid under that 1,200 meters line. Inside that distance, an interceptor cannot arm in time. The missiles were useless now. So the crew threw the system over to its guns, and the barrels began to swing around. The guns had maybe 20 seconds. The drone had less distance than that. It dove into the vehicle radar, engine, crew cabin, and the last gun on the base went dark. And then the base made its worst assumption. The radar vehicles were burning. The Pantsir was burning. But the helicopters, 17 of them in their neat rows, had not been touched. To the men on the ground, the raid looked finished, and it looked like they had survived it. That belief would last exactly 6 minutes. 6 minutes was the entire gap between the last drone and what was coming, and it had been built in deliberately. Long enough to be certain the shield was down, but short enough that nothing could be put back together. It was an insurance window the crews could not afford to waste. Men ran toward the burning radars. Helicopter crews were dragged out of sleep, and the order on the command net was the same for all of them. Get them up now. Covers came off. A few rotors began to turn, the first blades beating slowly against the smoke. But you cannot crew, check, start, and fly 17 helicopters in 6 minutes, not while your radar and air defense are burning around you. 1K-52 got as far as spinning up, its rotor climbing towards speed. It never left the ground. At the 4-minute mark, 135 kilometers away, 4 launchers fired. These were the real attack. 4 M39 ATACMS American-supplied ballistic missiles. Each was built to open in the air and rain hundreds of small bomblets across a patch of ground the size of a stadium. They came from 4 separate HIMARS trucks, wheeled launchers that carry a single ATACMS apiece. One truck, one missile, spread far enough apart that no single blow could catch them all. They lifted 4 seconds apart, forming a 12-second train of fire, and arsed toward Berdyansk at roughly 1,000 meters a second. Flight time was a little over 2 minutes. The trucks were already rolling off their firing points before the missiles reached the top of the arc. On paper, this was the exact threat the S-400 existed to kill. Its published reach against a ballistic target runs out to 60 kilometers, giving the system the better part of a minute to see the target, hold it, and fire. Farther back, a regional radar did catch the 4 tracks climbing and flagged them as ballistic, and a warning did reach the base. But the local radar that turns a warning into a shot was a burned-out vehicle. The relay that carries a firing order was down, and no one ever handed the battery a track it could use. The launcher sat loaded and blind while 4 missiles crossed the exact stretch of sky they had been built to own. Nothing rose to meet them. The first missile opened above the northern row over the K-52 gunships. There was a sharp string of cracks high in the dark as the warhead split, and then the air itself seemed to hiss. 1 warhead, 950 bomblets. It came down across the flight line in a single spreading pattern, a wall of fragmentation and fire roughly 200 meters wide. Beneath it were helicopters built to survive a battlefield, but now they were cold, empty, and packed wing to wing, with nothing to answer with. 4 seconds later, the second missile opened over the Mi-8 transports to the south. The third came down on the maintenance yard, the fuel trucks, tow tractors, and vehicles that might have dragged a burning helicopter clear and turned every one of them into more fire. The fourth opened above the aviation ammunition, low and wide over the open storage. That was where the night stopped being a strike and became a chain reaction. In under 20 seconds, 3,800 bomblets had fallen on the base. A full line of gunships and transports came apart in overlapping sheets of fire, rotor by rotor, tank by tank, until the flight line was a row of burning wrecks. The fires fed one another. Fragments opened fuel systems, and burning fuel ran beneath the airframes. Onboard weapons began to cook off, throwing more steel into the air and pushing the fire crews back down routes the wrecked support vehicles had already blocked. In the ammunition zone, the explosions did not stop when the missiles were gone. They continued one after another in the darkness until nearly 4 o'clock in the morning. By first light, the arithmetic of the night was simple. 17 helicopters had been counted on that apron. Afterward, 5 to 7 blackened rings marked where they had stood. The shield that was supposed to prevent this had not been overwhelmed, and it had not been outgunned. It had been unplugged one radar, one power unit, one relay, and one gun vehicle at a time by 6 drones that cost, together, a fraction of a single interceptor sitting in the tubes they left intact. The most advanced air defense system Russia fields in the theater had been reduced, for the price of a few small drones, to a row of blind launchers watching its own airfield burn. The S-400 did not fail because it was weak. It failed because its strength lived in a handful of vehicles, and a handful of drones could reach them. Every base built on that same shield is now just a list of targets.